The movie starts at the home of the President of the United States. At night, Presidents Benjamin Asher and his bodyguard, Mike Banning, go boxing to get in shape. Mike is in charge of the Presidential Guard. And he and the President and his family are very close. Soon, another bodyguard named Dave Forbes came. Pure-minded the President that he had to go to a fundraising event in a few minutes. The President Asher and his family then got ready to leave for the event. Margaret was his wife. And Connor was their son. Asher went with a group of White House guards. Mike was in a car with President Asher, son Connor. The President and his wife were in another car. At that time, it was hard to get around because it was snowing. Suddenly, something happened that made the President's car fall off the bridge. Before it fell, the President's car skidded and got stuck on a bridge. The President wasn't hurt, but his wife was badly hurt and had a hard time getting out of the car. Some of President Asher's guard were told to save his wife first. But because it would be impossible to save both of them, Mike only saves the President. The President's wife was still in the car when it finally crashed. So the President's wife died in the incident. 18 months later, Mike is seen getting ready for the day. He's back with his own life. But the event still makes him feel bad. Before going to work, he met his old friends at a cafe and talk with his boss, Jacobs. It turns out that Mike is no longer the President. His bodyguard because he didn't protect the President well enough. But he misses his job and the President. In the next scene, he was moved to the Treasury, which is close to the White House. President Asher met with Mr. Lee, the Prime Minister of South Korea, at the White House in Washington, D.C. He came with some of his staff and his chief bodyguard, Mr. Park. During this, an unknown plane flew into the no-fly zone set up by the United States to send a strong message to American military jets. Chased the plane. Surprisingly, the foreign plane did fire its high-tech weapon. Mr. Lee and his staff went to the White House to meet with the President of the United States. During the meeting, Mr. Lee talked to the President about North Korea, which keeps crossing their border without permission. They talked about what they could do together. They attacked the two military jets until they blew up. And then they crashed. When the Presidential Guards heard this, they rushed to protect President Asher and God. Everyone at the meeting into the White House bunker right away. At the same time, the building guards rushed to get their weapons and prepare for the next terror attack outside the building. Moments later, a foreign plane flew closer to the White House in Washington, D.C. And it quickly started shooting at civilians in the area. Mike saw the plane by accident, and when he ran to the White just to find out what was going on, he knew something was wrong there. He saw the foreign plane coming up to the White House and shooting at the guards in the area, killing a lot of guards. Soon, one of the military jets attacked the foreign plane until it could no longer fly. The unidentified plane then blew up and crashed into the Washington, D.C. monument, causing it to shatter and fall on several people nearby. Then Mike, who was there, was shocked by the city bus that was nearby exploding. He saw a group of people moving toward the White House gates, where they planned to blow themselves up. It looked like they were terrorists trying to get into the White House. Mike quickly got a gun and fought them off as they tried to get into the White House. But the terrorists threw a lot of bombs into the building's courtyard right away. And they also shot the guards in a very cruel way. After the terrorists destroyed the White House gate, Mike tries to help the guards fight them. The group of terrorists moved quickly into the White House courtyard and opened fire on the Presidential Guards. They then went back to the bunker, where the President is trying to get in touch with the Pentagon and waiting for news about the situation outside the White House. Suddenly, the South Korean gas attacked several people in the bunker. The guard chief for South Korea's Prime Minister, Mr. Park, is seen pointing his gun at President Asher. President Asher. It turns out that Mr. Park is the one who came up with the idea for the terrorist group, and Forbes, who's in charge of the Presidential Guard, is his partner. They had carefully planned what would happen. While this was going on, a few guards were left outside the bunker. They tried to fight off the terrorists who had already gotten into the building. But the terrorists were too many. And killed them. So the terrorists kept breaking into the White House. In just 72 hours. They quickly took control of the building. Even though the military and police were getting closer to the White House, the terrorists were able to get in and hold the American president and his ministers hostage. They told the Pentagon about it, and then Mr. Park killed his prime minister in front of people at the Pentagon. He also captured President Asher and his ministers there as hostages. Mike Banning, on the other hand, was already inside the White House. He saw that none of the guards were alive. They were all dead. Attacks by terrorists have made it look like the building is in bad shape. Mike started making plans and ran into the CCTV room to turn off all of the bunker's cameras. Mr. Park told his men to look for the president's son, who is still in the White House. Mike plans to get the president and other staff out of the bunker at the same time. Alan Trumbull, the U.S. spokesman, has been named interim president at the Pentagon to solve the problem. Mike then called the Pentagon to tell them that he was the only soldier still alive there. But they didn't believe him. Jacobs tried to get Alan to believe in Mike, because he was the only one who could save the president at that point. After they decide to trust Mike, Jacobs tells him what's going on in the bunker. She tells him what the terrorists want, so Mike can change his plan in the bunker. Parker calls the new acting president Alan Trumbull and tells him to pull the entire lead, including the American carrier, out of South Korea. He also asks American soldiers to leave the White House and gives him 72 hours to decide what to do. Park, the leader of the terrorist group, asks both the president and the minister about the Cerberus code. This Cerberus code is used to control all of America's nuclear weapons. The code is split into 3 parts, and only the president and his 2 ministers know all 3 parts. President Asher is not an easy person for them to talk to. But when the defense minister was about to be killed, the president had to give the terrorists the code. When the first nuclear code was successfully given out, those at the Pentagon who knew about it quickly called Mike for help. They told Mike to find Connor, the president's son, who was still in the building right away. The terrorists would make Connor look like a threat, so that President Asher would speak up and say the final nuclear code. But when Mike started to act, Park and his men saw him on one of the still working CCTV. Then Park asked Forbes to find Mike. But Mike didn't know that Forbes was looking for him. Mike moved faster to kill a few terrorists. And with the help of a former presidential guard, he was able to control where they were inside the White House. He found the president's son quickly. He had been hiding behind the building's walls. People at the Pentagon who heard it now felt a little better. Mike quickly put a blanket over Connor and called the officers outside to come to get him right away. In the end, President Asher's son was saved. Then Mike tries to find out who is in charge of the terrorist by threatening some of them he saw. While in the bunker, Park tortures Ruth, the presidential secretary, into giving him the second Cerberus code. The president finally told Ruth, "You give the code to Bark." So, President Asher only had one code left. Outside, Forbes meets Mike, a member of the Presidential Guard, who he still thinks of as an old friend. Mike thought that Forbes was the only person still alive there. But when Forbes said the name of the terrorist leader, Mike became suspicious. Mike attacked Forbes quickly, but it took him a while to kill him. Mike used his skills to figure out that Forbes was also a part of the crime. He killed Forbes right there and got some information about the bunker. The American military chief of staff at the Pentagon was getting annoyed with Mike Banning's ineffective attempts to get the president to come out. So he sent 5 Apache helicopters was getting annoyed with Mike Banning's ineffective attempts to get the president to come out. So he sent 5 Apache helicopters. There, though, the terrorist leader didn't want to just dance still. Park told his men to attack them from the White House until 5 helicopters blew up and fell. The explosion also made Mike jump. Park is angry and kills one of the president's ministers in the bunker. Ruth was used as bait to get out of the White House. Luckily for her, the military officers came to her rescue. Park wanted the helicopter so that they could leave the White House. People at the Pentagon were shocked, but they decided to send a helicopter to help them. They also hurried to put helmets on the remaining prisoners in the bunker so that the snipers could not tear them apart. When they all came out, as soon as they got in the helicopter and were ready to take off, it blew up. Everyone was shocked, because they thought that the president was in the helicopter that blew up. Allen and the people at the Pentagon thought that President Asher was dead. So there was no hope. Surprisingly, both the president and the leader of the terrorist group were still in the bunker. Making different threats, the terrorist leader was able to get the president Cerberus code, and he used it right away to turn on all of America's nuclear codes, which would cause everything to blow up. Then they ran out of the room as the bomb blew up the back wall of the bunker, trying to kill the president and some of his men. Parker shot at the president, but Mike Banning, who was already upset with him, moved quickly to fight him back. By the time they were done, only the terrorists were left. After a long fight, Mike finally put a knife in Parker's head, and he died right away. Mike also hurried to turn off the Cerberus code, because the Pentagon told him to. He finally got the bomb under control. He saved the United States and the rest of the world from danger. Then he saved the president and left the White House quickly.